Where do you want to start with today's show? We can either talk about a guy who zoomed in for the Eagles or a guy who zoomed out for the Eagles. In would be the Honey Badger, out would be Brandin Cooks of the Texans. Here on Birds 365, the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Mac, a.k.a. John McMullen and Jody McDonald, hanging for the next two. J-Mac, where do you want to start with today's show? We can either talk about a guy who zoomed in for the Eagles or a guy who zoomed out for the Eagles. In would be the Honey Badger, out would be Brandin Cooks of the Texans. Which one do you want to start with?
It's up to you, Jody. It's I don't know if Brandin Cooks was ever in at any point. I thought that was unrealistic, but
he was in conversation.
Yeah, he was in one conversation. Yeah, I mean, he was so pricey, and he ended up getting an extension with Houston, which was I was a little surprised. So I never thought he was realistic, but the Honey Badger. That's somewhat more realistic. I wouldn't put it odds on favor, especially now there's a report the Rams might be interested. So if the Rams are going to carve out some space for a 1-year deal, you're in trouble. He certainly seems to want to play back in New Orleans, but it doesn't seem like New Orleans wants him. So, that's one that if the market isn't there, sort of like Steve Nelson last year, the Eagles can offer, hey, come in here, you'll start. You're right back on the free agent market. Maybe, at his age, it's probably not going to happen, but that's how you kind of spell it for the player. And that one's a little bit more realistic.
And I know you know this, but just to officially note it, if Brandin Cooks is a little pricey, guess what? So are other wide receivers who have established themselves in the National Football League, whether the Eagles want to acknowledge it or not, whether they want to get involved in that pool and jump in, that's up to them. Or we can just see a whole mess of Zach Pascal this upcoming year.
Yeah, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a rookie, I think. And I don't agree with that philosophy. And they tried to get a receiver, and we've talked about it a lot, and they went a different route, either via trade or trying to go after guys like Allen Robinson and Christian Kirk just got crazy. But Allen Robinson, it would have been, a place they would have gone. And certainly they would have gone with Calvin Ridley or Robert Woods. So it's, that's pretty significant. I'm surprised. But then, Cooks is such an interesting player because he's so productive and he's always getting traded. It's the weirdest thing because it never happens in the end. Even more so when he started in the league, it's become more prevalent over the past few years as you get new general managers who think a little bit differently and they're willing to trade more. If you think about he came in the league in 2014. That doesn't seem like a long time ago, but it was from a GM. It was from a trade standpoint in the NFL. And this is a guy who always produces. Like we've been talking about Devontae Parker a lot, 1,000-yard season. This guy's got six.
Mm-hmm.
And he keeps going from team to team to team. The Saints, remember the Patriots in the Super Bowl, the big Malcolm Jenkins hit. He had 1,000 yards that season. Basically the Patriots, they've had two receivers, Randy Moss and Brandin Cooks for 1 year, who was really productive. And I'm exaggerating a little bit for effect, but they're not typically a great wide receiver team. Then he goes to the Rams. He gets 1,000 yards there. Then he goes to the Texans and he gives 1,000. I mean, the guy just produces. And for whatever reason, he's always getting shipped off. He's always getting traded. I can't understand it. But I never heard serious interest with the Eagles and Brandin Cooks. And look, I think they'd be willing to go after certain players, and we know the certain players. I mean, Calvin Ridley's pretty high on a 5th-year option. Robinson got a nice little deal, but not crazy. And that's more in the realm of where they wanted to be.
But that Brandin Cooks falls into that range.
Well, not money wise. He's more expensive. No, production
more expensive
wise
than Allen Robinson.
Well, he got, average annual. Now, all these hokey numbers, and we'll see when it's spot. He was scheduled to make $12.5 million a year on his original contract, and he just signed an extension that can make him up to $20 million a year. So he's more expensive, yeah. Now we'll see. Again, all these things are framed. We talk about all the time, framed. Yep. In a player perspective. But even if we forget the extension, and the Eagles would have had to work out extension, and even I wrote about it or talked about it a little bit somewhere, and I said, well, they have to bring that cap number down if they're going to bring Brandin Cooks in.
Sure.
And that was on the original $12.5 million. Now, somehow you can, Howie does it all the time with avoidable years, and you can push things off to the back end. But I don't think they want to be up in that average annual value range for Brandin Cooks. Maybe they would change for an AJ Brown or somebody like that. I just never got the feeling they wanted to be in that range.
At least we know that they inquired before the new deal was done with the Texans. They got the new deal done, which most people assume means he's staying put, but that's not even a given.
Yeah, that's not even a given.
They could do an about face pretty damn quickly if they wanted to, but they've redone his contract, and he can always redo it again. So we need to wait for the details on it, but that's just another proven veteran wide receiver that the Eagles may have inquired on, may have had interest with, but didn't get done. And that's the only thing that matters, is eventually got to get it done. You can ask on everybody. You can talk on everybody. You can even make offers on everybody. The only thing that really matters at the end of the day is, did you add him to your roster? And as of right now, that's not the case with Brandin Cooks, who looks to be, not definitively, but looks to be staying in Houston this upcoming year as productive wide receiver you're going to find, as John just noted, throwing all those stats at you that he's accomplished and put up over the last couple of years. The other guy they did actually have a conversation with, not on or about, with, was the Honey Badger yesterday. It's one of those good news, bad news situations. Good news is, wow, they talked to him. They had a sit down with him. Well, not a sit down, but they had a conversation with him and told him what he could do in this upcoming Eagles defense and how he would be a fit. I'm sure numbers would discuss with his agent. I don't know if they would discuss with the player or not. I would guess not. But the fact that they had the conversation with him is a good thing. The fact that it was virtual is not really a good thing. If he was really motivated to become a Philadelphia Eagle and believe this was a possibility, it's not that hard. COVID is somewhat in our rearview mirror. You can get on a plane these days, and you can get to Philadelphia. We're not asking you to fly halfway around the world. Get up from Louisiana to Philadelphia could have been a doable thing. He chose not to. I'm not putting a lot of stock in the possibility of the Honey Badger landing here. And oh, by the way, I did see, I think it was Rappaport had the report on him that he's in no rush to sign. Right now, he's more worried about family and getting into the best shape possible. Can I throw the BS flag on that one, Johnny Mac?
Sure, throw it out there.
I don't believe that for a millisecond, Rappaport.
No. Throw it out there.
Why the hell would you even put that out there? Other than it was spoon-fed to you.
You know why, Jody. You know why.
The money isn't what he wants it to be yet.
It is the game of the information broker, trademark Mike Sealski. I always give him credit for that. So that is, that's what you do. To get the information, you got to spin things in a way the player and the agent want it spun.
Flag on the play.
Yeah, well, you're right. And by the way, when you say there's little, I think you're right. I think the Eagles are the safety net for that particular player. But guess what, Jody? What's today's date? April 8th.
Today would be the 8th, big guy.
April 8th. Joe Banner was out there calling Tyrann the big name trap. People around this league, all you gotta say, he's out there on April 8th. That tells you a lot. And people aren't banging down his door. And the longer it goes on, the more chance it is that he's going to have to accept to play on a 1-year deal and go back on the market hopefully next year. And if the Rams aren't interested and the Saints aren't interested, well, guess what? Here comes the Philadelphia Eagles around the corner. And this might be a situation where they just luck out. And sometimes we talk about it all the time. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And when I say big name trap, which I kind of agree with because this is clearly a descending player. While he's clearly a descending player, he is much, much better still than anything the Eagles have at safety. And he's also the kind of versatile safety that Jonathan Gannon has always talked about and always talks about Harrison Smith. So he's that movable piece, would be the most versatile player in the Eagles back seven since Malcolm Jenkins. I mean, he can play all over the place. So he's a fit from that standpoint. And I think it's realistic because I don't think the Saints want him. They had him in the building, and that's how this league works. If you want a player and you get him in your building, he's not leaving your building. The Rams, now that concerns me because if the Rams can carve out some spot, you can see him joining Bobby Wagner and going that route and trying to win the Super Bowl. And that one concerns me a little bit more. But if those two teams bow out and nobody else, sort of comes up out of nowhere, yeah, the Eagles might have a realistic chance.
And here's one of the things that concerns me about the Honey Badger. If the Eagles sign him tomorrow, I'm going to tell you the Eagles upgraded their talent on their team, and I'm going to be happy for it. I've liked the kid since he was a Heisman Trophy finalist, as a matter of fact, and I thought fell unwarrantedly down to the third round. Yeah, I know he had some marijuana issues back then.
Well, that doesn't matter anymore. It mattered back then. It doesn't matter anymore.
Exactly. Here's my only 2022 issue with the Honey Badger above and beyond how much he's going to cost. And you said it's a 1-year deal. Oh, no, it'll be a multi-year deal.
Well, yeah.
It'll be a multi-year deal with disappearing years, which Howie Roseman is very good at. He's not going to come in and cost a team $10 million this year, 1 year, and then the deal's over and done with. No. It'll be spread out over a period of time. Guarantee that. But here's my on-the-field concern with the Honey Badger. I still like Andy Reid. He's a pretty good coach. He's a pretty good evaluator, and they've been a damn good team. Yeah, I know they got picked off earlier than we thought last year. I thought they were going back to the Super Bowl again, and they lost that game to the Bengals. And, yes, I get it. Went to overtime. We don't need to relitigate the whole overtime thing, but Patrick Mahomes got his hands on the ball first, and unlike the week before against the Bills, he couldn't do anything with it. And then, yes, the Bengals did allow, the Chiefs did allow the Bengals to get into an area where they could kick a game-winning and advance to the Super Bowl field goal. The Honey Badger is still a great fit for the Kansas City defense. And from what I can judge from afar, they basically washed their hands of him and moved on. Not because they think, oh, he's done, but they knew what the cost was going to be, and they wanted to allocate their resources elsewhere. They did not put enough of an emphasis on him to say, oh, yeah, we got to have the Honey Badger back. There's been no reports or rumors about him potentially going back to Kansas City. Why is that? If you appreciate Andy Reid and the Chiefs' ability to judge players, they got a closer up, close and personal look at him than anything else. Does that put any fear into you, John?
Well, Andy has a history of that, and the best example would be trading Donovan McNabb in the division. Everybody was, how could you trade Donovan McNabb in the division? Because he knew he was done. And he didn't care. So, yeah, I mean, Andy has a history of making good decisions when it comes to personnel. And you used Andy, and that's a good measuring stick. I used a calendar. All I need is a calendar. Good player with that reputation, 4-time All-Pro, out there on April 8th. That tells you all you need to know about what the league thinks of this particular player as a whole. And that's exactly what not that he's not necessarily done, but that he's clearly a descending player. And remember, he's got a big name, and he does have a reputation, and he does have a resume. So it's very difficult for players like that to say, oh, I'm not, my days of being, regarded as one of the top safeties in this league from a financial standpoint. It's very hard for players to give that up and to give that thought process up. He's not even turning 30. This is kind of amazing. He's not even turning 30 till next month, which is, a bad word in the NFL. But this will be his 10th season. He's been playing a long time, and he's been playing a lot of football. And, that there's wear and tear in this league that is real. So look, 1-year deal, I'm all on board. And I hope people realize that when I say that, as you mentioned, there's going to be voidable years. That's baked into it. That's how the Eagles do business. But effective, real world, he's going to get 1 year, 10 million, let's say, for sake of argument. I'd be okay with that. No problem whatsoever.
Here's the one balancing act you have to do with the calendar. You're right. The calendar is facts and facts. And Honey Badger can have these delusions of grandeur as to what type of deal he thought he was going to get. He should have gotten, in his estimation. When the calendar gets to a point, those numbers are decreasing. Sorry. Teams have just spent cap money, and some will be willing to go mortgaging well into the future with those voidable years and get him close to what he wants. But one of the reasons why I'll cut a guy a little slack when it comes to the calendar and judging what the league thinks about him. Well, what the league thinks about him may not match up to what the player thinks about himself and his agents thinks about him, and they may just have an unrealistic expectation. Sometimes these numbers sneak out, sometimes they don't. In the case of Jarvis Landry, the wide receiver who got released by the Browns, I know that I read he's looking to become a $20 million wide receiver.
Well, everybody is now. Maybe he's not as crazy as we thought.
He's still crazy, even with the explosion of the wide receiver money. Jarvis, you're not a $20 million guy.
He's
so that's
less
the reason
crazy.
why he hasn't signed quickly. Sometimes the players' expectations are literally outrageous.
Yeah. And that's why I said, somebody with his resume, it's very difficult to not consider yourself one of the best safeties in the league. And he's in a different phase of his career. And at some point, he's going to have to accept it if he wants to continue to play. And there's no evidence to point that he wants to walk away. So it's just a natural sort of path players take in this league. And it's always difficult. Fletcher Cox probably had to go through a little bit of that. And you've still got probably too much money, but had to go through a little bit of it. And Tyrann is going to have to go through that. And that helps the Eagles in a certain way, because it's pretty evident that nobody is going to sign him to a contract that you would think of, 4-time All-Pro safety at the height of his career contract, which is what he probably thinks he is. It's pretty evident that he's not getting that deal from anybody. And the market is what the market is. And at some point, he's going to come to the realization that he's got to play somewhere. And if the Rams aren't interested, I could see the Eagles popping up and stealing one.
No, they at least got some time, virtual as it was, spent with him yesterday, which at least keeps them in the conversation. Not sure how close it is to getting done. And if move the goalpost moved a little bit, it's better than not moving at all. But I would not say that it was close. And if Fletcher Cox had to go to, how long was Fletcher Cox on the open market, John? Less than 24 hours.
Well, I just meant essentially he had to take a pay cut, which isn't easy for a player of that stature.
Can I take a pay cut to $14 million per year?
I get it.
I'd volunteer for that right about now.
But Jody, if you're making, for sake of argument, $20 million for years and years and years, and all of a sudden they say, "Hey, we're going to cut you down to 14," you might have a different sense. Now, people like you and I find that hard to, wrangle with, because we're like, "Oh, it's fine."
You lie, and about 98% of the population.
Well, we're not, but that's the reason we're 98%, and they're really, it's 99.9%, and they're at the top of their game, and they're at the top of their game for a reason, because they think they're at the top, and confidence is part of it, and it's a big part of it.
I'm not begrudging him one penny of anything he's made previously or is going to make this year. The only thing I will begrudge him is, it's difficult to have to go through that and realize that you're not what you used to be.
Well, it's all relative.
Coming all the way down to $14 million per.
Well,
get that man some Valium or something.
It's all relative. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I went through this with the Adrian Peterson. Now, that's one of the greatest running backs of all time, one of the greatest pure runners of all time. It was paid like it for years and years and years and years and years and years. And, he kept thinking he was. He still thinks he is. But, you're not going to get the money you once did. And it's difficult for those small percentage of people.
Well, that's one of the things that athletes in all sports, certainly in the National Football League, because the game is as physical as it is, there's a shelf life involved, and you've got to be able to comprehend the fact that, yes, at some point you're going to be at your zenith. You're going to be at your highest on the accomplishment level, on your production level, on your earning level, and then it's going to come down. That's just a natural fact. Unless your name is Tom Brady, your earning power is going to come down, and you got to be able to comprehend it and deal with it. All right, earning power is key to today's show, because we've got one of the biggest earners on the planet coming up next, and for good reason. He's one of the best NFL writers that there is. From Sports Illustrated, our buddy Game Day Ed Kratz joins us here on Birds 365.